distinguished panelists, representatives from Government of Karnataka and different Government of India, and very happy to once again, for the nth time, invite very proudly members of diaspora to Indian diaspora to Bangalore and Karnataka. It's a proud privilege for us in Karnataka to be hosting members of our diaspora, and Government of Karnataka, with the guidance of Government of India and under the leadership of our Honorable Minister Sri Deshpandeji, has done a phenomenal job of hosting this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, which many people now agree is one of the best ever organized in India. So I am really proud of the hosting and facilitation done by our government and Honorable Minister's leadership, and thank you all for making this a very memorable and great event for us in Karnataka. Now, I'm standing in front of you to speak about not a very exciting sector like IT, technology, or infrastructure, but I am here to talk about agribusiness and food processing. Not a very exciting sector, but definitely equally promising, let me assure you. Before coming to the point, I'll take a few minutes to paint the scenario. Last 20 years, we have had phenomenal growth in our country, very rapid growth, in fact. And these 20 years of rapid growth have unleashed a socio-economic change of sorts. And that change is again further fueling change in our lifestyles also. In urban areas as well as rural areas and semi-urban areas, we see lifestyles changing very rapidly, evolving very rapidly. And that has a particular relevance to the subject I want to talk about. When lifestyles change, a lot of our habits change, along with our behavior, of course. And food consumption are a big part of our daily routine and habits. And due to this change that I talked about, patterns of food and food consumption are also changing rapidly. So, people in urban areas and peri-urban areas are looking for convenient forms of food consumption as well. So they're looking for not only quality, but also convenience in food consumption. Now that convenience is triggering a whole chain of reaction. Now, if you want to make available convenient forms for food consumption, a whole back-end chain needs to be put in place. And that change is being driven now by the change in lifestyles. So, in order to meet this rapidly growing, changing urban food consumption patterns, a lot of investments are required in the food processing sector. And that's the opportunity that I want to briefly talk about with you today. Now, there has been a traditional trade which has been meeting the food requirements. And even today, that traditional trade continues to grow. It continues to grow at about 10% per annum. But on the other hand, if you look at the organized retail, organized trade, which is meeting this new consumption requirements, that is growing at about 20%. So the new organized trade is growing at double the speed, double the rate of traditional trade that is meeting our food consumption requirements. On top of the organized retail, now you have e-commerce, which is growing and occupying a bigger space of the retail. Currently, e-commerce is estimated at about, I think, $30 billion. I think there are people here who would have a better, more accurate number. And I believe by 2020, e-commerce is likely to grow to about $120 billion per annum, going on to $220 billion by 2025. So e-commerce is growing at a much more rapid rate than all other forms. And then in the middle of all this, you have many farmers groups getting into direct selling business also. So all these opportunities are opening up. Now, of this total retail, food occupies about 30% of the total retail. So there is expectation that in the next coming years, food retail itself could be worth about close to $900 billion by 2020. Food retail itself could be worth $900 billion by 2020. And food industry itself is growing at a compound annual growth rate of about 11%. So these are few indicators of the opportunities that lie in agribusiness and food processing sector. If organized retail is growing, then in order to feed that growth, you require a lot of back-end industries that are involved in food processing, packaging, grading, value addition, semi-cooked, ready-to-eat, pre-packaged, what have you. There are n number of opportunities that are opening up to feed this phenomenal growth that we are observing in the food processing and retail side of it. And food market itself is also rapidly growing. So Confederation of Indian Industry, CII, estimates that in the next few years, 5+ years, the investment requirements in the food processing sector are about $30 to $35 billion. So in order to feed this growth, $30 to $35 billion of investments are required in the food processing or agribusiness sector. So that's the opportunity, again, that I'm talking about. So this is the national scenario. Coming down to Karnataka. Karnataka is a very diverse state. Unlike the northern states in the Indo-Gangetic belt, where predominantly mono-agriculture is prevalent, as you come down south of the Vindhyas, there is a lot more diversity in our agricultural practices. Karnataka has about 10 agroclimatic zones. I mention it because with different agroclimatic zones, you can grow different agricultural produce. So we have the ability to grow any food or food produce that is required. One of the most diverse states, you can say Karnataka along with Maharashtra perhaps and one or two other states, are the very few states that have this huge diversity of being able to grow any produce. And we also have last year, prior to our global investors meet, we have come out with one of the most competitive agribusiness investment policy. So we have matched every state in the union, or we have surpassed them in terms of the incentives we provide for agribusiness investments in our state. And you take any commodity, perhaps we are in the top 5 of that commodity. There are very few produce that we cannot produce in Karnataka. So you look at it from the investment attractive side, you look at it from the input side, we have got everything that an agri or a food processing investor would like to, would desire in a state. And on top of it, we are a very progressive state. We are a reform-oriented state. In fact, our agriculture marketing reforms that we brought about after our government came in Karnataka have now become the gold standard for marketing reforms across the country. In fact, Government of India has picked our online marketing reforms, and now they have made it a national agri market, a unified agriculture market. So we pioneered agriculture marketing reforms. We have brought in online marketing facilities into our agriculture trade. We give single license to investors so that they can directly procure their requirements from the farmers. They don't have to go through the usual mandi routes. Now we have also enabled warehouse-based sales. We are also investing heavily in building up our warehouse capacity across Karnataka. We are investing about 700 to 800 crores, an unheard of investment just in warehouses. Government is investing this money. So we are trying to put in place all the necessary infrastructure and policy enabling environment to facilitate food processing sector in our state. Not only that, we have also gone that extra mile of setting aside funds to help agri startups get along the way. So we have a separate fund which is administered by the IT department, dedicated for agri startups. So we have thought the full cycle so that investors find Karnataka a very good place to invest. So there is the market opportunity, there is the enabling environment in Karnataka. I hope those of you who are thinking of investments, or those of you who are thinking of investments, particularly in the food processing sector, would look at Karnataka, and we are willing to work with you. We have, as I mentioned, one of the best agri-business food processing policy. Copies or digital copies of this policy have been made available to you already. In case you need it, we have a few print copies as well. Or you please feel free to contact our industries department. They are the nodal agency. They will put you in touch with us, and we are ready to work with you so that you have a great investment opportunity realized for yourself in Karnataka. And I hope you will seriously look at it. When you look back to your motherland, the first thing that must come to your mind is about the land, because we are ultimately, that is our origin, that is our source. And when you think of investments, I hope you will think about food processing investments as well. Thank you for a patient listening. I hope you had a good time in this Pravasi Bharatiya Divas. All the best to all of you.